She walked in with a wine glass and a death sentence. "I inherited $10 million, she said. "I want a divorce. Get out." No tears. No shame. Just cold ink and empty eyes. Her brothers dragged me down the stairs like garbage. My name vanished from the accounts by midnight. I bled. I stayed silent. They thought I was done. What they didn't know, I built everything she owns. Every dollar. Every deal. Every trademark. And while they celebrated my downfall, I was already writing the first line of their ruin. The kind of revenge that doesn't scream. It signs. It files. And when it lands, nobody walks away clean. What happened next made her beg. It was one of those forgettable Thursdays, nothing loud, nothing off, just that heavy midweek stillness. The kind of day where your mind is already drifting toward the weekend, and your body aches for a pause. I had just gotten back from the gym, dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the front door, and was halfway through slicing an apple when she walked in. Sienna. No grand entrance. Just a slate gray blazer lazily slung over one shoulder like she didn't even care where it landed. Her heels clicked across the floor like punctuation marks in a sentence I hadn't yet read. But her face, that's what stopped everything. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was blank. Unreadable. Cold, but not cruel. More like a final draft already signed off on. She set a thick manila envelope on the kitchen counter like she was handing me the check at a diner. Then, with eyes steady and voice flat, she said, "I inherited $10 million. I want a divorce. Get out. Tonight." That was all. No hesitation, no second take. Just a clean, deliberate break, like scissors through paper. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Maybe I missed a beat. Maybe this was some twisted joke. I waited for the smirk, the sarcastic laugh, anything. But she just stood there, arms folded, like she was expecting me to thank her for the heads up. I blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" My voice barely made it out. "You heard me," she said without blinking. "The inheritance came through. There's nothing left to fake. I'm finished. I want my space. My life." My jaw tightened on instinct. It wasn't just what she said, it was how casually she threw away 7 years of everything. 8 years of partnership. Of dinners and late-night talks. Of pulling each other through nightmares. I'd been there every step. Helped her brainstorm business moves. Rewrote pitches while she slept. All gone, like an old file dragged to the trash. I looked at the envelope. My name typed on the front. No signature, no personal touch. Just cold ink. She hadn't written it in the moment. This was prepared. Drafted. Finalized. Probably for weeks. I peeled it open slowly. The sharp edge of the paper caught the tip of my finger, drawing a line of blood. A tiny wound that stung more than it should have. Inside were the divorce papers. Crisp. Efficient. Itemized like a grocery list. She kept everything. The house. The cars. The joint accounts. Even the artwork I helped her hang. My share? According to her version of the past, I brought nothing worth keeping. I exhaled. It wasn't rage that came out. It wasn't sadness either. Just a deep, quiet disbelief. The kind that settles into your chest and makes itself at home. Then came the sound. Heavy footsteps. Deliberate. I turned and saw them, her twin brothers, Derek and Logan. Always sneering, always circling like flies. They stood in the doorway with folded arms and matching smirks, like extras in a bad crime show. "She doesn't need you anymore," Derek muttered, smirk curling like smoke. I didn't bother replying. I glanced at him, then at her. She didn't blink, didn't correct him, didn't flinch. That silence? That told me everything. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned down to the hour. She had waited for the check to clear, had lined up her backup, and once the money was safe, she made her move. I stepped back from the counter and rubbed a hand through my hair. "So that's it?" I asked. "You get your windfall, and I'm just a name to delete?" She tilted her head, genuinely puzzled why I hadn't already vanished. "I don't love you," she said calmly. "I haven't in a long time. I stayed because I needed to. Now I don't." If she had cried, I might have broken. If she'd shouted, I might have fought. But she gave me nothing. Just precision. Ice in the shape of a woman. And suddenly I realized, maybe this was who she always was. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. My finger was still bleeding. I wiped it on a napkin, then nodded slowly. "Okay," I said, barely above a whisper. "If that's what you've decided." She nodded once, like a queen waving off the help. Gone before dinner. I walked past her without a word. Not yet. Not while they were watching. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom we used to share. But even that space felt distant now. like a hotel room after checkout. I opened the closet. Empty spaces everywhere. My cufflinks. My tablet. The framed photo of my mother. All gone. She had already cleared the pieces that mattered, probably had excuses ready, just in case. But I hadn't noticed, because I trusted her. I pulled out my travel bag and started packing. Not much. Just the things that held meaning. The old suit my dad gave me. The watch I almost lost twice. My passport. I folded each item with care, like they weren't clothes, but pages of a story I wasn't finished writing. Downstairs, I could hear laughter. Their laughter. Casual. Dismissive. It made my stomach tighten. I picked up my phone and opened our joint bank accounts. My name was already erased. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because something inside me finally clicked. They thought this broke me, but they didn't know me at all. Once the bag was zipped, I took one last look at the room. No grief. Just a strange kind of clarity. I walked down the stairs slowly, suitcase rolling behind me. Sienna was in the kitchen, swirling wine like it was a celebration. She didn't even look up as I passed. Her brothers did. Derek watched me, expecting a scene, waiting for one last outburst. But I gave him nothing. I walked to the door, stepped outside, and paused on the porch. Then I turned halfway back and said, "Thomas Steele, you'll regret this. All of you." They laughed. Let them. Laughter was all they had left. I was already miles ahead, and they didn't even know it. This wasn't the end. This was where I began. I wasn't even off the driveway when her voice tore through the air like glass breaking. "Hey, that bag stays." I froze. My fingers wrapped tighter around the handle. It was all I had left. I turned slightly, just enough to see her charging down the steps. No shoes. Wine glass still in hand. Rage painted across her face. "This is mine," I said calmly. "My clothes. My father's watch. Childhood photos." She threw her hand up like I'd insulted her crown. "Everything in this house has my name on it. Everything. You walk off with anything, and that's theft." I stared at her. Really stared. "You want to make this scene? Right here? In front of your neighbors?" She didn't blink. "I don't care who's watching. You don't get to take anything from me." That's when I heard them again, Derek and Logan, their boots pounding across the deck like they'd been listening from the shadows, waiting for their cue. They appeared, one flanking each side of her like bodyguards who took their jobs way too seriously. Her brothers who finally got the green light to swing. "Didn't you hear her?" Derek said, arms crossed like it made him taller. "Drop the bag. Don't drag this out," Logan added. "Just let go." I looked from one to the other. They were built broad, thick around the shoulders, but their tone was all bark. Like boys playing tough because they never had to prove it. A small part of me almost laughed. Another part, the part still stinging, wanted to hit back. But I didn't move. Years of swallowing pride, years of staying calm to keep things from falling apart, they trained me for this moment. "I'm not leaving without what's mine," I said, voice even. "You can kick me out, fine. But I'm not walking off like I never mattered." Then it happened. Derek made the first move. I didn't see it coming, just felt the sharp jerk as he grabbed my hair and yanked my head backward. The suitcase slipped from my hand, landed on the walkway with a dull, hollow thud. Before I could steady myself, Logan was already there, one arm locking around my chest, the other slamming into my shoulder like he meant to leave a mark. I twisted. I shouted. I tried to break free. They didn't care. They dragged me down the front steps like I was weightless, like I'd never lived there. My back scraped against the stone, every step a sharp reminder of how little I now belonged. I could hear the tearing of fabric. Maybe my shirt, maybe something inside me. Sienna's voice cut through the chaos from behind. "Get him out of here." Then I hit the gravel. Hard. The crunch was deep, the kind that told you tomorrow would hurt in places you didn't know had nerves. I didn't move. Not right away. Not because I was afraid, but because if I got up too fast, I might lose the calm I was holding on to. And I couldn't give them that. Not now. I wiped my lip. My fingers came back red. A thin line, but sharp. I stood slowly, deliberately. Logan sneered. "You're lucky we didn't call the cops." Derek leaned on the porch railing like he'd just finished lifting weights. "You really thought she'd keep you after that money hit her account?" Sienna stood in the doorway, arms folded, mouth tight. No emotion. "This was never your home," she said. "This life was never yours." I didn't reply. I just stared at her. Not the jewelry or the robe she wore like armor. I stared at her eyes. That's where it cracked. A flicker. Not remorse. Not even guilt. But fear. Fear that I wasn't broken. that maybe I was just quiet. I reached down, picked up the suitcase, scuffed now, covered in gravel, and checked my watch. Still ticking. Good. I looked at all four of them, standing there like royalty at the gates of their plastic castle. And in the calmest voice I've ever managed, I said, "You'll regret this. Every one of you." Logan laughed. "What? You gonna sue us? Go cry in court." "You've got nothing," Derek added. "You're just pissed she saw through your little act." I smiled. This time, the real kind. The kind that feels like a closed door. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." Sienna flinched. Just barely. But I caught it. She knew me better than they did. She knew I wasn't a shouter. I wasn't a fighter. I was a strategist. And she just handed me something I hadn't had in a long, long time, a reason. I turned and walked away. No limp. No stumble. Just steady steps. Every stride I took felt like a nail sealing the coffin of the lie she'd been living. Every footstep was quiet, but it said everything. Because here's the truth no one talks about. When you've been stripped down to nothing, there's no fear left. Only focus. You remember who you were before they tried to make you forget. And I remembered. I remembered the nights I taught myself code while she slept. I remembered every investor meeting I attended while pretending to be just a consultant. I remembered every share I bought under shell names, every paper I filed that she never once cared to read. This wasn't the final act. This was my origin story. They thought tossing me out was the grand finale. They didn't realize it was just the start of chapter 1. They thought I was empty now, but they forgot who built her. I did, and I could build again without her. Stronger, smarter, quieter. And when I returned, I wouldn't need to shout. I wouldn't knock. I'd just appear, and they'd know. They'd feel it, that they threw the wrong man down those stairs. And everything they mocked that day? It would burn, but not in flames. In silence. That first night, I found a small hotel on the edge of town. Worn carpet. Dim lights. No frills. Just a bed, a desk, and quiet. That was all I needed. Silence. Not power. Not revenge. Just peace. I sat on the bed for a long time. No TV. No sound. Just stillness. My body ached. My scalp. My ribs. My pride. But something in me had stopped thrashing. It was like coming up from deep water. That first breath where your lungs don't know what to do with air. They thought they'd stripped me down. They had no idea. Sienna never asked who I was before I walked into her world. She liked to say I was easy, quiet, low maintenance. She'd brag about how I never made demands, never took up space. What she never questioned was why. Because I'd already lived in the spotlight. I'd already survived the pressure, the chaos. And I had stepped away from all of it. For peace. For her. She met me after I left all that behind. She met me when I was still Evan Hale, not just her quiet husband, not just the guy who used to work in tech. She didn't know the full truth. I co-founded Zephyr Tech. We built cyber defense systems, military grade. Our software guarded data for governments, hospitals, even space programs. 5 years ago, we sold it. Quietly. Split the deal clean. I walked away with $17.3 million. And I vanished from the headlines by choice. Because I didn't want cameras. Or meetings. Or power. I wanted a home. A woman to believe in. And somehow, I thought she was that. For a long time, I believed Sienna was the one. The partner. The anchor. But the truth? She never really saw me. Worse, she never tried. She loved the version of me that wore old jeans, made omelets on Sunday mornings, and kept quiet while she shined. She told her friends I did freelance work. I let her say that. It was easier that way. Let her take the spotlight. Let her father think he was the reason she launched her brand. Let her brothers call me the tool guy while smirking over beer. I didn't mind playing small. I wasn't after their respect. All I wanted was for her to think I was good. Turns out, that wasn't enough. Now I sat in a quiet hotel room with nothing but a bag of clothes, a busted lip, and more clarity than I'd had in years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was awake. I opened my laptop. Still ran smooth. Logged into a secure server I hadn't touched since before the wedding. There it was, row after row of encrypted folders. Holdings. Properties. Assets. See, after we sold Zephyr Tech, I didn't sit around. I invested. Carefully. Quietly. Globally. Real estate. Clean energy. AI startups. All tucked into trusts that didn't carry my name. The real number? Closer to 20 for million. And that wasn't even counting the land I quietly bought in Utah, or the licensing rights I held through a shell corp named Tundra Holdings. Sienna never asked about any of it. Never noticed my coding trips were meetings with hedge fund managers. Never looked twice at the quiet envelopes from the Isle of Man or the Cayman Islands. She thought I was simple, and I let her think that, because I thought love didn't need resumes. That's on me. I scrolled through the list: properties, portfolios, dormant companies. Nothing flashy. All clean. All protected. I wasn't a billionaire. But I wasn't the broken man they tossed onto the sidewalk either. They poked the bear. Now the bear was standing. I opened my notes app and started a list. No dramatics. Just bullet points. Every name that smirked, shoved, laughed, or dismissed me. Sienna. Derek. Logan. I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't threaten. I'd just pull the right threads quietly, one at a time. Then I made a call I hadn't made in 4 years. Nolan. An old friend. Real estate attorney. Sharp. Loyal. Still owed me big. He picked up on the second ring. Harland, I said. It's time. He went silent for a second. You're serious? Dead serious. Where? By the next morning, I was sitting in his office, mahogany table covered in paperwork. His eyes widened as he scanned the files. They don't know this is yours? Not a clue. Damn. I smiled. Calm. Controlled. Let's start with the Whitmore estate. His brow went up. Her family's. Not entirely, I said. Not yet. I handed over the documents, trust deeds, stipulations from Sienna's grandfather's estate plan. My name was there. Co-trustee in the event of divorce or legal separation. Harlan stared. Her brothers are building on that land. With permits based on incomplete transfers, I said. The land is technically owned by an LLC. Dormant. Which I control. He let out a slow laugh, shaking his head. You're the most polite wolf I've ever met. No, I said. Just done being dismissed. We filed the injunction that afternoon. No big scene. No press. Just paperwork. In a few days, the sheriff would deliver the news. And when he did, they'd remember me. Or more accurately, they'd realize they never knew me at all. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It sharpens you. If you let it. Some people burn bridges. Lash out. That's not me. I don't explode. I calculate. By the time I left the hotel and stepped into Reed's office the next morning, I was already 4 moves ahead in a game they didn't know existed. He leaned back in his chair, scanning the estate papers like he'd found buried treasure. They really don't know about this? Nope. I'm still listed as co-trustee in the Whitmore Trust. Wild. I nodded. Her grandfather and I had a quiet friendship. Every Thursday, dinner. Talked about legacy, strategy, philosophy. He didn't trust his grandsons. He adored Sienna, but he never respected her judgment. Reed shook his head. And now those same brothers are bulldozing the guest house to build a pool hall on land they don't own. I leaned forward. Which gives us leverage. He gave me that old college smile, the one he wore when we hacked the campus firewall just to see if we could. You're playing the long game. I nodded. No. I'm restoring balance. Within hours, we filed. Quiet. Precise. An injunction to halt all construction based on unclear ownership and a pending trustee dispute. It would take a few days to move through the system. Perfect. That gave me room to move the next piece. I left his office and walked a few blocks to a place I hadn't visited in over a year, a storage unit on the east side. Buried under dusty monitors and old hard drives were the files I needed. Sienna used to mock me for keeping physical records. Everything's digital now, she'd say. Sure. But firewalls can be breached. Paper can't be hacked. In those boxes were printed transfers, Shell Corp documents, deeds, backup logs. All under names she never heard once. For the next 2 nights, I combed through everything. Every password still worked. Every company still intact. Every asset untouched. It was like reviving an old machine. Slow at first, but lethal once warmed up. The first move I made? Quiet. I redirected dividends from a property group in Lisbon into a fresh local account under a new alias. Then I did something even simpler. I bought a server. Powerful. Portable. Delivered to a private workspace I leased under a false name. The lab was coming back to life. And I wasn't doing it alone. Reed was just the start. Next, I called Reed Cross. Corporate litigator. Financial tactician. She once helped me shut down a hostile acquisition before Sienna even knew my name. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. But the second she heard what happened, she said, "Tell me where to be and what to wear." 2 days later, she walked into my office. Navy suit. Sharp heels. Eyes like fire. She dragged you out by your hair, she asked, sipping coffee. Yep. She smirked and set the cup down. Good. Then she has no idea what's coming. We got to work. No breaks. No distractions. I laid it all out. My assets, her known holdings, the joint. Reed grinned as she scanned the documents. You're going to win this war without raising your voice. Exactly. That was the plan all along. 4 days later, the court officially approved the injunction on the Whitmore estate. The sheriff delivered it personally. I didn't go. I didn't need to. Reed filled me in. By then, construction had already begun, guest house roof half demolished. Derek and Logan were outside, cracking jokes about installing a hot tub, thinking they'd already won. Then a patrol car pulled into the gravel driveway, envelope in hand. Authority in uniform. Everything stopped. Hard hats came off. Tools silenced. Trucks backed out like they'd just stumbled onto a crime scene. The twins started shouting, arguing, playing tough. The officer didn't flinch. He pointed to the seal and said, "This structure cannot be altered until legal ownership is settled." Ownership, a word they'd never questioned. To them, it was inherited, automatic. Entitlement, dressed as tradition. That night, my phone lit up. Sienna. I expected voicemail. Instead, her voice came through sharp, less sure of itself, more frantic. "You're behind this, aren't you?" she snapped. "Don't insult me, Evan. The sheriff just showed up at my family's estate. My brothers nearly got arrested. You're trying to destroy us." I let her rant, let her swing wildly in the dark. And when she ran out of breath, I spoke, slow, calm, steady. "You never asked about your grandfather and me. Never wondered why he always poured my wine first at dinner." She didn't respond. I could hear the static in her silence. "He didn't just like me, Sienna. He trusted me. More than Derek. Maybe more than you." She swallowed hard. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Nothing you can give," I said. "But my attorney will be in touch." I ended the call before she could come up with another line. The next day, I got a notification. The Whitmore legal team had called an emergency meeting. The estate was frozen. Derek and Logan officially barred from continuing construction or making any financial moves until the trust was sorted. Sienna's name was now tied to a growing list of pending court actions. And this was just step one. They woke the quiet man. Now the quiet man had teeth. By the time the injunction hit, their cracks were already showing. I wasn't sitting on a high horse. Wasn't drinking champagne or watching from a tower. I was at my desk, a rented office space, cold coffee in hand, watching the house of cards lean. And the best part? I hadn't touched a single brick. All I did was remove the pin holding it together. One clause, one signature. That's all it took. What they didn't know was that construction began before Sienna's money cleared. No transfer finalized. No ownership confirmed. They assumed the land would automatically fall into Sienna's hands. They assumed I'd be gone before I could raise a voice. Wrong on both counts. Now they were facing the planning board for illegal construction on disputed property. Contractors were threatening lawsuits. Unpaid equipment fees were adding up. Work stopped. And all I did was lean back and let gravity do what it always does. Reed texted me. Probate hearing confirmed. Sienna's been summoned. I smirked. She'd have to face a judge now. Because her family missed a single line, buried deep in Grandfather Whitmore's will. In the event of marital dissolution, co-trustee rights default to the surviving spouse. That's me. I still remember the night I found that clause. Sienna and I had just married. Her grandfather invited me to the lake house. Just us. He poured me scotch, looked me in the eye, and said, "Sienna's smart, but not always wise. You're steady. Keep her anchored." Back then, I took it as a compliment. Now I know it was a warning. The probate hearing was held in a stone courthouse downtown. I didn't attend. Tessa represented me. I watched the damage unfold from afar. According to her notes, Sienna walked in wearing a pearl gray suit and confidence like perfume. She thought this would be procedural. Simple. Then Reed stood and read the clause aloud. The judge leaned forward. The room went still. Sienna's lawyer whispered something urgently. And for the first time in years, she cracked. Walked out during recess. Later, Reed told me. She muttered that you weren't important enough to be written into the will. I laughed out loud. She really had no idea. Not about the dinners. Not about the trust. Not about the man her grandfather actually trusted. Reed paused. She asked how you knew about the clause. I raised an eyebrow. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, Reed said. That you didn't need to spy. You just knew how to read. Later that same afternoon, Sienna called again. But this time, her voice wasn't angry. It was tight, controlled, but barely, like someone trying to hold a rope that was slipping inch by inch. "What do you want, Evan?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away, because I knew what that question really meant. It wasn't curiosity. It was surrender. Her kingdom was tilting, and she finally saw it. "I don't want anything," I said. "I'm just reclaiming what's mine. Always was. The land wasn't yours. Not entirely. You just assumed I'd stay quiet." A beat. Then, "He really liked you, didn't he?" "He respected me," I said. "There's a difference." I hung up before she could respond. Not out of spite, but because sometimes silence is the sharpest blade. Silence is where the regret starts to echo. A few days later, Logan showed up outside my office. I watched him through the glass. Tight shirt, fake grin. He knocked. Waited. Knocked harder. I opened the door halfway. "Bold of you to show up." "Look," he said, scratching his jaw. "We got off on the wrong foot." "You mean the part where you and your brother dragged me down the steps?" I asked. He winced. It was a misunderstanding. Emotions were high. Very. He shifted gears fast, into salesman mode. "Sienna's been rattled. You got your little win with the land. No need to escalate." I stepped aside, just enough for him to see the whiteboard behind me, covered in timelines, case notes, strategy charts. His face changed. "What's all that?" he asked. "Research," I said. "Preparation." "For what?" I looked him in the eyes. "For everything else." He left in a hurry. Good. The message had landed. The Whitmore name? Not untouchable anymore. And the man they mistook for an accessory? He wasn't staying quiet. Not this time. Whispers started circling their social circles. Lawsuits. Disputes. Inheritance complications. Suddenly, people got nervous. A luxury real estate project tied to the Whitmore name was paused indefinitely. One of Sienna's big endorsements, poof, gone. Her skincare brand was quietly removed from a major campaign. No press statement. Just a soft fade. Funny how little it took. Just the right words in the right ears. Not lies, just enough truth to make people wonder about the rest. I didn't need to destroy her image. She was doing that just fine on her own. All I did was make sure the spotlight didn't blink. That evening, I sat in my office, inbox buzzing, headlines shifting, conversations changing. And I realized something. Revenge isn't loud. It's not rage. It's math. It's patience. It's accuracy. And they were just now learning the price of mistaking silence for weakness. They forgot who I was. I had built a tech company from nothing, walked away from millions in search of peace. And now I was back, calm, calculating, and holding the pen this time. The house of cards was leaning, and I hadn't even blown yet. To be fair, Sienna moved fast once she thought she had won. I'll give her that. She froze our accounts before the ink dried on the divorce paperwork, changed every password, canceled the health insurance, killed the gym membership I'd used for years, even deactivated my grocery card. She thought she stripped me bare, like I was just another dependent she could unplug and forget. What she never understood, what she never cared to understand, was that I never needed her support to survive. For 5 years, I had been quietly running Tundra Holdings. She never asked what it was. It sounded unimportant, and I let it stay that way. Tundra was discreet, tucked away through a Delaware law firm. No public face, no paper trail that pointed back to me. Through Tundra, I held 3 tech patents, 2 beachfront properties in Ghana, and something far more dangerous. Her name, Sienna Whitmore's signature collection. Long before her company was real, before investors, branding, press, she came to me late one night, wine in hand, asking for help filing the paperwork. She had ideas, but no clue where to start. So I handled it, filed the trademark, paid the fees. She promised we'd transfer everything once it took off. We never did. Not out of spite. I just forgot. Life moved fast. She assumed it was hers. I never corrected her. The royalties funneled through Tundra. The licensing deals were airtight. No one questioned a thing. Why would they? I was just the guy in the background. Until she made me the villain. Now, sitting in my office, I opened the Tundra dashboard. Status, active. Accounts, profitable. Ownership, untouched. She never once checked. She never even looked at the roof she built her empire under. I clicked into the contracts folder. Scrolled to the original license. Tundra Holdings licenses Sienna Whitmore's signature collection to Orion Crest LLC for brand usage and monetization. I highlighted it. Clicked Terminate. A pop-up. This will revoke all external usage rights of this trademark. Proceed? Yes. Just like that, her brand lost legal rights to her own name. The next 2 days moved quickly. I sent takedown notices to every distributor holding her product. Retailers. Subscription boxes. Boutique chains. Each letter was clean. Legal. Sharp. Standard breach of license, cease and desist. I waited. Not for long. Day 2, the call started. Hi, we just received a legal notice about the trademark rights for the Sienna Whitmore collection. Is that correct? Yes. The license has been revoked. Will there be a new brand we should redirect to? Not at this time. They pulled her listings by lunchtime. Then another call. And another. By sundown, 7 major platforms had dropped her line. That evening, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Sienna. I hit play. Evan, what did you do? Rachel from Varel just called. She said your name is on some contract. My inventory is being pulled. What's happening? Her voice was shaking. Not angry. Afraid. The kind of fear that only hits when you realize the cliff edge is behind you. And your foot is already off. I didn't call her back. Not right away. I let her sit in the silence. In that space where she once felt invincible. And now found only air. Day 4. She texted. You're ruining everything I built. For what? Revenge. I stared at it for a while. Then typed one sentence. You said I couldn't take anything from here, remember? No reply. She remembered. That night. The driveway. Her voice. Venom sharp. You're not taking anything from here. She meant it as dismissal. Now those same words had returned, sharper, colder, and etched in legal ink. Later that night, Reed called me. She was laughing. She called my office 4 times. Wants to discuss options. I leaned back. Too late. I figured you'd say that. She built her throne on a foundation I laid. Used it to wipe me out. Now she'll learn what it feels like to lose something that was never fully hers. She's panicking, Evan, Reed said. Sponsors are ghosting. Wholesalers are freezing orders. There's even talk that she doesn't legally own her label. Word travels, I said quietly. As it should. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then she added, I've known you a long time. Seen you take hits without saying a word. But I've never seen this side of you. I never had to be this version. Why now? Because I gave everything I had for peace. And they brought war. I don't fight with fists. I fight with contracts. With facts. With time. They tossed me out, thinking I had nothing. Now she had nothing that didn't pass through my hands. I opened the trademark record again. Still mine. Still active. Still sealed. I didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. I just sipped my coffee and watched the quiet take hold. They started the fire. They just didn't think the flames would only fall on them. And now? Now came the silence. The kind that grows loud when empires collapse. Then came the shift. The silence broke, and in its place came rage. Threats. Voicemails. Emails dressed up in legal jargon, dripping with desperation. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The louder they became, the more control I had. Every shout confirmed who they were, and who I wasn't anymore. The next message didn't come from Sienna. It was from Derek. Yes, that Derek. The same man who once dragged me down a flight of stairs like I was trash. Now sending a politely worded email requesting a mature and private discussion. I nearly laughed. Still, I agreed. But on my terms. Public cafe. Downtown. Neutral ground. No shadows. No walls. No escape routes. I arrived early. Chintz a seat by the window facing the entrance. No suit. No polished shoes. Just jeans, a dark shirt, and the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. They walked in 5 minutes late. Derek in a blazer too small for his ego. Logan in sunglasses, indoors, still pretending he was someone. Sienna between them, clutching her purse like a shield. She didn't speak first. Derek did. We appreciate you meeting us, he said, trying for composed. Logan leaned forward. There's no need for this to get worse. I raised an eyebrow. Worse for who? They glanced at Sienna. Her posture was perfect, her face neutral, but her eyes betrayed her. They were tired. Red. Glassy. Not angry. Worn down. She tried to speak once. Failed. Then tried again. I didn't know you still controlled the trademark. You never asked, I replied. I assumed. You assumed I was too naive to protect myself. That I'd vanish quietly. No, she said, quickly. I just I assumed you wouldn't use it. I tilted my head slightly. Why not? Silence. Because the answer was obvious. They never thought I'd stand up. They saw me as forgettable, convenient, replaceable. Logan cleared his throat. Look, we're not here to reopen old wounds. Good, I said. Then let's talk about how you plan to heal the new ones. Sienna glanced up at me. There it was, something fractured in her gaze. Not shattered, but the first true crack in the mask. What do you want, Evan? She asked. The question she'd avoided for weeks. I leaned in slightly. Not to intimidate, just to make sure she heard every word. I want what you tried to erase. The land. The brand. The narrative. I want the truth to wear my name again. That's not a legal request, Logan muttered. It's not legal advice, I replied. It's a condition. Derek frowned. You're trying to destroy our family. I set my coffee down slowly. No. I'm letting people see what your family truly is. Sienna's voice dropped. What would it take for this to stop? I looked directly at her. Unflinching. A public apology. Acknowledging everything you did. Admitting what you erased. Confirming who I was in all of it. That's unreasonable, Logan cut in. No, I said, sharper now. Unreasonable was dragging a man by his hair in front of neighbors. Unreasonable was cutting him off, freezing his life. Then laughing while pretending he never existed. Derek shifted in his seat. Sienna's lips parted, then closed again. I built that brand, she whispered. It was my vision. And I never said otherwise, I replied. But I filed the trademark. I protected it. I funded the prototype. Negotiated the first supplier deal you forgot to read. I never asked for credit, Sienna. Until the moment you made me a stranger. Silence. And then it happened. Her mask didn't just crack, it broke. She blinked rapidly, mouth trembling, tears just behind the lashes. Not performative. Not staged. Real. I didn't think you'd fight back, she said, barely audible. I know. She looked down, then away. The cafe around us continued, cutlery, soft conversations, a child giggling somewhere. But at that table, time had narrowed down to just us. For people. Sitting in the rubble of arrogance. Sienna reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Set it gently on the table. I didn't write everything, she said. But it's a start. An acknowledgement. Of your role. Of the truth. I didn't reach for it. Why now? Because I'm losing everything, she whispered. And you're not screaming. You're not celebrating. You're just winning. And that, I think, is what hurt the most. Not that I was fighting, but that I was fighting with grace. Derek spoke. If she signs it, will this be over? No, I said. But it'll be the start. The beginning of an ending with dignity. Logan rolled his eyes. This is all about pride. I stood up. No. This is about justice. Something your family never valued. I picked up the letter. Didn't open it. Didn't look back. Outside, the sun hit my face. My chest was still. My mind quiet. No adrenaline. No shaking hands. Just peace. She had finally seen me. Not the background character. Not the handyman with a keyboard. Not the disposable husband. But the builder. The foundation. The man she thought she could delete. And now that the mask had shattered, she couldn't put it back together. People think revenge is loud. They imagine screaming, slamming doors, shattering plates. But real revenge? It's control. Not in chaos. In clarity. Not in shouting. But in the silence that follows. Not in flames. But in the shadows they never noticed until the light was gone. That's why I bought the ad space. A full back page spread in the Globe Times, Sienna's favorite magazine. The one she once told a reporter would define her legacy. She'd framed that article. Kept it in her home office. Last I checked, it was still hanging. The new ad? Simple. Clean white background. Elegant black font. Unmissable. To the Whitmore family. Thank you for showing me who you truly are. I forgive you. But I'll never forget. I've moved on stronger, sharper, free. And beneath that? A single logo. Hail Reclaim Group. A consultancy for betrayed spouses. A place for those thrown out, erased, blindsided, and told they didn't matter. A place to rebuild. Quietly. Powerfully. I didn't need to rub salt in the wound. The silence was doing just fine. I didn't shout. I didn't make announcements. I just let the world know I was still here, still standing. And now, I was helping others do the same. The ad ran on a Sunday. By Monday, my inbox was packed over 300 messages. By Wednesday, I had my first client. She was from upstate. Said her husband left her the day after she paid off his medical school debt. She cried during our Zoom call, not because she wanted payback, but because she just wanted peace. I told her peace is possible, but sometimes peace starts with a firewall, a forensic accountant, and a lawyer who doesn't blink. I knew exactly who to call. Meanwhile, Sienna's world kept crumbling. That polished apology she gave at the cafe? It didn't hold. Her brand, already shaking from the trademark collapse, dipped further. Retailers quietly began pulling her name from their platforms. The ones who once gushed about Sienna's passion now acted like she was never there. Then came the influencers. She had spent years building that image. Dinners with editors, photo shoots in Tuscany, interviews where she wore grace like perfume and smiled like betrayal had never passed her lips. But once my ad dropped, everything changed. People dug deeper. Screenshots resurfaced. One from last year, a caption where she wrote, "To my husband, thank you for being my calm while I chased the storm." Someone commented, "Is this the same husband you kicked out when the inheritance hit?" That one reply got thousands of likes. Sponsors saw it. Within a week, 2 beauty companies dropped her. One haircare brand issued a statement about realigning with our values. No names mentioned, but everyone knew. She tried to recover. Posted a video. Soft lighting, tearful voice, just enough tremble to seem sincere. "I've made mistakes," she said. "I was in pain. I acted out of fear. I never meant to hurt anyone." It might have worked. Until the next morning. The Globe Times ran a follow-up. An editorial. The cost of power, when love becomes strategy. They didn't call her out directly, but they asked questions. Sharp ones. What happens when someone builds their empire on borrowed trust? What happens when the person in the background finally speaks? They included my ad in the background, blurred, but unmistakable. I didn't respond. Didn't give an interview. Didn't post a rebuttal. Because sometimes the loudest messages earn silence. She called again, private number. I let it ring. Voicemail. "Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Her voice cracked. Tired. Like someone who walked through fog and just realized it was smoke. I listened twice. Then deleted it. Because here's what healing really means. You don't owe closure to the one who cracked you open. That week, I hosted a free online workshop, Rebuilding After Betrayal. I expected a few dozen. Over 700 showed up. Divorced women, abandoned fathers, partners erased from their family's business overnight. Quiet brilliance that had been used, dimmed, and discarded. And every single one of them said some version of the same thing. "I just want to feel seen again." That became our mission. Not revenge. Restoration. The Hail Reclaim group grew fast. Too fast? Maybe. But I was ready. I hired 2 paralegals, partnered with a New York firm, built a referral network. The stories poured in. So did the momentum. As for Sienna, she disappeared. Social media, gone. Website, redirected to a broken page. The Sienna Whitmore signature collection was marked discontinued. On 4 major platforms. Then came a letter from her attorneys. An offer. She wanted to sell the brand back to me. For pennies. I declined. Because it was never about the name. It was about what that name had been built on. One morning, maybe a month later, I stood in front of a mirror. Same eyes. Same hands. But something had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. Just clear. Clear on who I was at. Who I had become. And what I had rebuilt. My phone buzzed. Another client inquiry. Another life ready to rise again. I smiled. Because the woman who once told me I didn't take up space had just watched me build something powerful. Without shouting. Without begging. And that made me something she never expected. Unforgettable. I never thought I'd walk through that front door again. Not after the blood. The suitcase. The stairs. But life circles back when you've stood still long enough for the truth to catch up. It was a Wednesday when Reed called. Her voice was casual, but I could hear the grin tucked inside it. "The estate's been revalued," she said. "Your counterclaim?" "Approved. This morning." I blinked. "Already? You're back on the title. Full reinstatement." I didn't speak. Just stared out the window, sunlight painting soft lines across the floor. "It's yours again, Evan," she said. "Every inch." That afternoon, I drove out to the property. Not fast. Not fueled by revenge. Just to see what was left after they tried to erase me. The gates were still grand, Whitmore crest etched in black iron. But there was no guard. Just movers. 2 trucks in the driveway. Boxes being hauled out. Tape guns clicking. Sharp as scrawls on cardboard. She was leaving. Her attorney had offered to vacate quietly in exchange for no pursuit of damages. I didn't need to crush her. She'd done that herself. The front door creaked when I opened it. Same marble, same silence. But the house felt smaller. Not in square footage, in soul. The illusion had cracked. The charm was gone. No more rehearsed laughter. No more stage perfection. I walked through the foyer into the living room. Bare walls. No curated shelves. No gold accent vases, perfectly spaced. In the corner, a single box. Labeled, miscellaneous. Inside, a photo. Sienna and her brothers, smiling at the estate launch. She wore the same white power suit she had on the night she told me to leave. I didn't pick it up. Just looked at it for a second. Then turned away. Room to room, I walked. The upstairs office, where I once managed her business finances. Before she replaced my name behind my back. The guest room, where her brothers crashed like they owned the place. And the master bedroom, where she handed me divorce papers with the smug confidence of someone who believed they'd already won. The room was empty now, except for the ghost of a life that was never truly mine. In the kitchen, a few stray glasses remained, and a crumpled note left on the counter. It read, "I thought this house would protect me. Turns out, you were the only one who ever did." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. I folded it, not out of sentiment, but because for the first time in months, she'd written something honest. A few minutes later, I stepped outside. To the place where the guest house once stood. What I found was wreckage. The renovation had been abandoned mid-construction. Wood beams exposed. Tiles tossed. A cracked foundation where they tried to dig a jacuzzi pit. The dream they built on stolen land had collapsed, right into the soil. I stood still, hands in my pockets, just listening. And in that silence, there was peace, not absence balance. I didn't turn it into a luxury suite, not a game room, not a guest house. I turned it into justice. 6 months later, the estate became the home of the Hale Foundation for Reinvention, a nonprofit dedicated to helping others reclaim their lives after betrayal, abuse, erasure. The first floor became an intake center. Legal help, referrals, crisis support. The upstairs? A temporary residence wing for people fleeing toxic homes. We named it the Reclaim Wing. The Whitmore name? Scrubbed from every wall, every record, every door. Gone. One of the first people we helped was Jade. Mid-30s. Quiet voice. Eyes that held shame she never earned. Her ex had drained her accounts, stolen her invention, and left her drowning in debt. We helped her secure a patent under her own name. She wept, said it was the first time she felt real in 2 years. Then came Grant, retired firefighter. His own son had stolen his pension, forged his signature on a reverse mortgage. He walked in defeated. 2 weeks later, he walked out with an attorney, a financial advisor, and a new will. I didn't rebuild a home. I built a lighthouse. Not to spotlight me, but to guide others through the same storm. Because what they tried to bury me with, I turned it into bricks. Not for revenge, for legacy. Sienna never came back. I doubt she could. Her name surfaced once or twice. A podcast interview about lessons learned, mistakes that made her stronger. I didn't finish listening. Didn't need to. She lost the one thing she treasured more than any brand. Control. I never gloated. Never showed up uninvited. Never said, "I told you so." I didn't have to. The house said it for me. Every time someone walked through those doors. Every time a survivor found peace inside those walls. Every truth restored. They all whispered the same message. You never should have dragged him out. Because now, he owns everything you tried to take. It was poetic in a way. Exactly 1 year from the day she'd told me to pack my things and disappear. I stood under soft lights on a stage, microphone in hand. An auditorium full of people listening. Not a courtroom. Not a podcast. It was the Global Tech and Ethics Summit. A gathering of entrepreneurs, visionaries, thinkers. The kind of room I hadn't stepped into in 6 years. Back when I left Zephyr Tech. I thought I was done with stages. Done with crowds. But life wasn't done with me. The host, Maya Chen, introduced me simply. Please welcome Evan Hale. The man who reclaimed everything. Applause. Polite. Curious. Most had read the articles. The man who vanished from Silicon Valley, only to reappear with a nonprofit that shook the divorce world. I walked up slowly. No nerves. No script. Just presence. Nina sat in the front row. My wife. Yes, wife. And in her arms, our daughter. 6 months old, asleep against her chest. I never thought I'd get this life. Not again. Not after betrayal. Not after the blood, the suitcase, the silence. But sometimes when you clear the wreckage, flowers bloom where you least expect them. Nina hadn't met the man Sienna married. She met the one who stood back up. She didn't fall for a broken story. She chose the one who rewrote it. We weren't flashy. No matching watches. No curated posts from foreign beaches. We were steady, quiet, real. And that was enough. I stepped to the mic. Looked out at the faces waiting for some Ted-worthy punchline. I smiled. You want to know how I built Zephyrtech? I said. But I'd rather tell you how I rebuilt myself. That took longer. Cost more. Changed me deeper than any startup ever could. There was a low hum of agreement in the room. I continued. Last year, on this exact date, I stood in a driveway. Blood on my lip. Everything I thought I loved, locked behind a door. I was told I didn't own anything. That I didn't matter. That I was done. I paused. People shifted. A few nodded slowly. I didn't shout. Didn't break anything. Didn't beg. I just looked them in the eye and said, "You'll regret this." And then I walked away. I caught Maya watching from the wings. Not checking the time. Just listening. I wasn't bluffing, I said. I had spent years shrinking so someone else could shine. Letting people believe I was just the quiet one. The helpful husband. The invisible. But the truth is simple. Being forgotten doesn't erase your value. It just stores it until you're ready to reclaim it. A slow clap started at the back. I kept going. Within a year, I took back the land, the brand, the dignity. And I didn't do it with rage. I did it with structure, with calm, with clarity. I turned toward the screen behind me. Hail Reclaim Group, glowing white against black. Now, I help others do the same, not by yelling louder, not by throwing punches, but by rebuilding. Smarter, stronger, and in full view of the people who once believed we were disposable. Cleaner. That's the only word for it. Not louder, not bolder, just cleaner. From the ruins of what I'd lost, I looked out over the crowd. And I saw it. Tears in a few eyes. Soft nods. A man in the second row mouthed, "Thank you." Then came the question. It always comes. A hand went up. A journalist. Familiar face. Voice calm. What advice, he asked. Would you give to someone who's just been betrayed by the person they trusted most? I held his gaze. No rush. No dramatic pause. Just the truth. Don't yell, I said. Don't chase. Don't shrink or sink to their level. Just build in silence. And let your success suffocate every lie they ever told about you. The room held its breath. Then the applause followed. Not loud. Not forced. But real. Slow. Grounded. Steady. After the talk, people lined up. Not fans. Survivors. Widows. Single fathers. Entrepreneurs who'd been pushed out of their own companies. A woman leaned in and whispered, "You saved me from going back." I nodded. Didn't take credit. Just listened. I stepped off stage to find Nina waiting. She wrapped an arm around my waist. Our daughter, tucked against her chest, stirred. She yawned, her tiny hand curling around my shirt like a reminder of how far I'd come. "You did it," Nina whispered. I shook my head gently. "No," I said. I became it. On the drive home, the city lights blurred across the windshield. Soft, scattered, golden. And my thoughts drifted. To Sienna. To the version of her who once stood in a doorway, arms crossed. And said, "You're not taking anything from here." Now, a year later, I sat behind the wheel of my own car. Next to a woman who saw me. Really saw me. And in the back seat, a little girl with my smile. I looked down at my wrist. The watch Sienna once tried to claim in court. She lost that battle. Like every other one. But the item didn't matter. What mattered was that she thought she'd won. She thought dragging me down the stairs, freezing my accounts, rewriting the narrative, meant she had erased me. But what she never understood is this. You can't destroy a man who knows how to rebuild. You can't bury someone who remembers exactly where he planted his roots. So as we pulled into the driveway of our quiet, sunlit home, I smiled, not out of revenge, but out of peace. Because the man they dragged out by his hair, he didn't just survive. He became the blueprint. And now, he owns the world they thought they ruled.